Imagine a world where peace isn't brokered by grand treaties and, solemn ceasefires, but well, by parking space.
Parking spots. It sounds absurd, doesn't it?
It does. Pulled straight from a satirical sketch, maybe.
Hmm.
And look, you'd be right to some extent. But as we're about to discover, the line between high-stakes geopolitics and mundane, sometimes even comical bureaucratic absurdity is often thinner than you might expect.
Hmm.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're the place where we plunge into the most complex topics and try to pull out the nuggets of insight that hopefully truly help you understand the world.
That's the goal.
Today we're embarking on a really fascinating journey. We're looking into the complex and at times, frankly, bewildering landscape of the Ukraine conflict.
Right, and we'll be examining two very different, yet, as you'll see, surprisingly intertwined perspectives on navigating towards some kind of lasting peace.
Exactly, two very different angles.
That's right. Our journey starts with something quite serious, a highly detailed roadmap to peace. It's this comprehensive document offering a multifaceted political solution. The aim is ending the bloodshed, stabilizing the region, basically moving beyond just military or economic fixes.
Okay, so a big picture plan first.
Yes. But then, as we unpack the layers, we take a sharp turn. We're going to look at Ukraine's constitutional aspiration for NATO membership.
Ah, that clause.
That clause. And it's here that this seemingly symbolic statement sparked a surprisingly detailed and, let's be honest, often comical debate over things like, well, helicopter landing pads and even EV chargers at NATO headquarters in Brussels.
Right, so from high politics to parking logistics.
Pretty much. Our mission today is to unpack these sources to see not just the grand geopolitical strategies and the weight of these constitutional aspirations, but also the unexpected and frequently hilarious ways that symbolism, national pride, and even the most mundane bureaucracy play out on the world stage.
So the listener's mission.
Yeah, by the end of this deep dive, you'll gain, we hope, a deeper understanding of the core challenges, the proposed solutions, and maybe a chuckle or two at the sheer absurdity that can sometimes accompany high-stakes international diplomacy.
It's good to find the absurdity sometimes. Keeps things in perspective, maybe.
Maybe. It's certainly a fascinating look at the many layers of international relations, isn't it? From the very serious and existentially critical
Yeah.
to the surprisingly trivial and distinctly human. It reminds us that behind every headline, there's a complex interplay of motivations, aspirations, and sometimes just very ordinary concerns.
And to guide us through this landscape, we've got a really rich stack of sources today. Everything from that highly detailed, serious peace proposal to internal memos from NATO and the Ukrainian parliament, and even some very, very opinionated news reports from around the globe.
Quite a mix.
So settle in, because this is going to be quite the deep dive.
Yeah.
Okay, let's unpack this first one. Our initial source lays out a very clear, very serious argument right at the top.
Mm.
There is no military solution, only a political one.
Mm-hmm.
This comes from a compelling document titled The Roadmap to Peace in Ukraine, From Alaska to a Lasting Settlement.
That premise alone, it immediately challenges a lot of the conventional thinking we hear, doesn't it?
It absolutely does.
Yeah.
And what's particularly insightful here is the premise this roadmap sets. It doesn't just, make a blanket statement. It starts by observing the grandeur and symbolism of that recent, though ultimately unsuccessful, Alaska summit.
Right, between Trump and Putin.
Exactly. And it notes it was the first time in several years a Western leader actually engaged Putin with a measure of respect and direct dialogue.
Which is kind of stunning when you think about it. It really is. The source points out that the sheer fact no Western head of state had even spoken directly with Putin for so long before that summit is staggering, especially given the scale of death, destruction, and geopolitical destabilization from the war.
Yep.
This prolonged silence, the source argues, was a really poor substitute for genuine diplomacy.
And this signaling without talking approach, as the source puts it, it really highlights a fundamental failure, doesn't it? It sort of hinted at a breakthrough, maybe even a land for peace deal, but it just fizzled out. Failed to codify anything concrete.
That's a key observation in the text. The source notes that while the summit opened a channel, the core stumbling blocks just remained entrenched. Untouched, really.
Same old problems.
Pretty much. On one side, you had Putin's unwavering demand, an ironclad guarantee of no NATO expansion into Ukraine, a red line he'd articulated repeatedly.
I've heard that one before.
Many times. On the other, Zelensky had an equally firm demand for ironclad Western security guarantees to protect Ukraine's sovereignty and future.
Also understandable.
Of course. But the roadmap's author makes an interesting point. If genuine peace truly takes hold, such external guarantees shouldn't even be necessary for Ukraine. The fundamental first step for everyone, according to this analysis, is to acknowledge the simple yet profound truth that only a political solution rooted in direct engagement and, crucially, compromise can bring lasting stability.
Okay, so if the solution isn't military, and that summit diplomacy faltered, what about the strategies that have been widely used so far? This source really challenges their effectiveness, doesn't it? It suggests they're just insufficient for achieving, real, lasting peace.
It thoroughly critiques them,
Hmm.
yeah. What's particularly incisive is how the source directly challenges the effectiveness of current approaches, saying they're fundamentally inadequate for stable peace. Take Western economic sanctions, for instance.
Right, the sanctions regime.
The roadmap describes them not as tools for peace, but ultimately as a form of coercive warfare, designed less for negotiation and more for military or regime change outcomes.
That's a strong claim.
It is, and the argument is compelling. Such sanctions, while undoubtedly impactful, don't inherently offer a path to stable peace. In fact, they risk locking Russia into what the source calls a frozen conflict scenario, meaning active fighting might stop, but Western restrictions would just stay in place indefinitely. And that removes any real incentive for Moscow to compromise further or genuinely engage in a political settlement.
I see. If there's no carrot, why bother?
Exactly. The source points out that Putin's fear of this exact outcome is legitimate. He has little interest in a ceasefire that just cements a stalemate without offering any tangible relief from those punitive sanctions. It's a strategy, the source suggests, that might actually prolong the conflict rather than resolve it.
And the other side of that coin, the military support the continuous supply of, increasingly powerful weapons to Ukraine. The roadmap critiques that too.
It does, similarly. The strategy of supplying deadlier weapons, while obviously intended to bolster Ukraine's defense and push back Russia, is seen by this source as merely escalating the battlefield without addressing the underlying political conflict.
It's a critical distinction, isn't it?
It really is. While these weapons might change the fighting on the ground, they don't inherently lead to a stable or lasting peace. The core problem, as the roadmap meticulously details, is that these are tools of warfare, meant for military objectives, not instruments of political resolution designed to foster reconciliation and compromise.
It's about winning battles versus ending the war.
Precisely. That's the emphasis.
Which brings us directly to the roadmap itself, described as comprehensive a package deal, tackling everything from political legitimacy to reconstruction. It's quite ambitious. A multi-pronged approach, 6 points. Let's walk through them. Point 1. Ukrainian elections and a new mandate.
This is foundational. The source stresses that President Zelensky's original 5-year term expired during the conflict, raising legitimacy questions in some circles.
Right, that's been mentioned.
So, to reestablish political legitimacy and get a fresh mandate, the proposal is for Ukraine to hold fresh elections. But, and this is crucial, it's not just any election. The critical element here is that Zelensky, or any candidate, would need to campaign openly on a federal model of governance.
A federal model, that's a big shift.
It is, because it proposes offering greater autonomy to regions and legally protected language and cultural rights for minorities, including ethnic Russians. This contrasts sharply with Ukraine's historically centralized system.
So the idea is to tackle internal divisions head-on.
Exactly. Address them directly through a new political structure, allowing diverse identities to flourish within a unified Ukraine. It's a model explored elsewhere to resolve internal conflicts.
Okay. And the second point touches on something we've definitely heard a lot about, a very contentious issue. Ukraine's constitutional amendments, specifically about wanting to join NATO.
Yes, this is a crucial but often misunderstood part of the roadmap. The proposal is for Ukraine to amend its constitution to remove that aspirational NATO membership clause.
Remove it. But it's a big deal, symbolically, isn't it?
Symbolically, yes, but the source notes that practically it's meaningless for actually getting into NATO. It doesn't grant admission, and removing it doesn't bar future membership if conditions change, say, in the 2030s.
So what's the point of removing it then?
Its value, according to the roadmap, lies in its potential as a powerful gesture of de-escalation. By voluntarily removing a clause seen as a direct provocation by Moscow, Ukraine signals a willingness to reduce tensions, prioritize peace, maybe open doors for negotiations that were previously shut.
Strategic signaling, not practical membership stuff.
Precisely.
Okay, point 3. Referendums in disputed territories. This sounds like a direct democratic way to finally settle the fate of places like Crimea and the Donbas.
That's the idea. The roadmap proposes a democratic mechanism under strict international supervision to determine the final status of these contested regions.
Crimea, Eastern Territories.
Yes, residents there would get three clear, internationally recognized choices: remaining within a federal Ukraine, declaring independence, or joining Russia.
Wow, those are stark choices.
They are. And to ensure fairness and transparency, these referendums would follow a substantial 6-month campaign period
6 months. Why so long?
to make sure all perspectives are thoroughly heard, debated, considered, allowing for a genuinely informed decision by the locals, free from immediate pressure, fostering a sense of self-determination.
Then point 4. Troop withdrawals and UN peacekeeping forces. This sounds like the mechanism for actually de-escalating on the ground.
Absolutely. This step envisions a significant, verifiable de-escalation. Both Russian and Ukrainian forces conducting a mutual withdrawal at least 50 miles from all disputed territories.
50 miles. That's quite a buffer.
It is. And to fill the security vacuum, the roadmap suggests immediate deployment of UN peacekeeping troops. Crucially, it specifies these forces should ideally come from neutral states such as India, Nepal, and others, ensuring impartiality.
And their job.
Multifaceted, maintain security, enable the safe return of refugees and displaced people, help normalize civilian life, stabilize the region's post-conflict.
And what about the economic side? Sanctions relief for Russia. Yeah, that's a big one, given everything.
Indeed. The roadmap proposes a phased sanctions relief for Russia. Not immediate, not blanket. It'd be gradual, conditional, tied directly to Russia's compliance with the peace process milestones.
How would that work?
There's a pragmatic suggestion for partial relief immediately upon agreement of the roadmap itself, like a good faith signal, an initial incentive. But full lifting would be contingent on respecting referendum outcomes and other agreed steps.
So clear incentives tied to actions.
Right. A pathway out of economic isolation linked directly to their actions on the ground and at the negotiating table.
And finally, point 6, a crucial element for Ukraine's future. A massive reconstruction package.
Vital. And it shows the long-term vision here. The war has obviously devastated Ukraine's infrastructure, economy, society. The roadmap calls for a global reconstruction fund, a huge undertaking, co-financed by the EU, US, Russia, and potentially China.
Russia and China involved in rebuilding Ukraine. That's ambitious.
It's just noteworthy, isn't it? Suggests a shared responsibility for rebuilding, a collective investment in future stability. The goal isn't just physical rebuilding, but fostering long-term stability, anchoring the peace, creating a future that makes peace sustainable.
So if we step back, what's the underlying philosophy here? It seems like federalism is really core to this whole roadmap for long-term peace in Ukraine.
That's a key takeaway, definitely. The source clearly argues why federalism is presented as so critical. It argues Ukraine's current centralized model, while maybe intended to foster unity, has inadvertently risked perpetuating ethnic and linguistic marginalization for some groups. A federal system with strong regional autonomy, decentralized power, it would be designed to let diverse identities flourish within a single nation, actually preserving national unity in the long run.
Can you give an example?
Sure, the text is quite specific. In regions like Donetsk and Crimea, where Russian identity and language are strong, policies under a federal system should guarantee Russian as a co-official language alongside Ukrainian.
That sounds like it could be controversial.
Perhaps, but the author believes this wouldn't weaken Ukraine, but strengthen it by actively reducing long-standing separatist grievances, integrating diverse populations more effectively. It addresses root causes by acknowledging pluralism.
Now, here's where it gets really interesting, providing a unique perspective. The author, an ethnic Indian in Nepal, shares this powerful personal parallel, saying identity and dignity matter as much as borders and sovereignty. That goes beyond just policy, doesn't it?
It's a truly compelling personal anecdote, yeah. Used to draw a universal lesson about human behavior and conflict. The author explains their own experience as a minority, understanding the plight of those made to feel second class in their own homes. It gives a direct lens on the Ukrainian situation.
Also.
They explicitly compare the situation of ethnic Russians in Donetsk and Crimea to ethnic Chinese in Indonesia or Tamils in Sri Lanka, places where language or cultural identity has been a flashpoint.
Oh.
The core message is that ignoring these deep-seated realities, the fundamental human need for identity and dignity risks perpetuating cycles of resentment and violence, regardless of state borders or official sovereignty claims. It's a powerful call for empathy, urging leaders to understand the profound human element behind these geopolitical conflicts, something often missed in high-level talks.
So to wrap up this first part of our deep dive, the roadmap's conclusion seems crystal clear.
Yeah.
A ceasefire can't precede a political settlement. It has to follow a credible, comprehensive roadmap.
That sums it up perfectly. The source powerfully reinforces this idea, arguing against the notion that just stopping the fighting will lead to peace. Grand summits, Alaska, wherever, they can signal intent, open communication lines.
Yeah.
But they must be followed by a roadmap rooted in political realism, not military illusions. The overall message is sobering, but clear. Ukraine's tragedy can't be ended by weapons or sanctions alone. It demands courage from leaders to embrace compromise and trust in the people, Ukrainians, Russians, minorities alike, to decide their future through ballots, not bullets.
Very comprehensive, maybe idealistic, but pragmatically structured vision.
Definitely urging a shift from battlefield tactics to political will.
Okay, so we've just unpacked a very serious, deeply thoughtful roadmap for peace, grounded in political realism, compromise. But sometimes, in geopolitics, even the most serious intentions or national aspirations can lead down some, well, unexpected, rather absurd paths. Our next set of sources delves into Ukraine's constitutional clause on NATO membership. And this is where things take a distinct turn towards the truly, remarkably absurd.
Indeed. We're definitely shifting gears now. We're looking at Ukraine's strategic course toward NATO membership, a clause boldly put into their constitution back in 2019. And this is where aspiration meets bureaucracy, often with hilariously disproportionate results, as our sources reveal.
One source even satirically calls it the world's most expensive wish list. Or, my favorite, a Tinder bio looking for a long-term security arrangement.
That's pretty good.
Which, honestly, given how things played out, seems pretty apt.
It's an apt analogy, yeah. And this is precisely where the absurdity really kicks in, because fundamentally, just because you write something into your constitution doesn't automatically mean you get it.
Seems obvious, but maybe not.
Apparently not. It's a profound yet often missed point. The source puts it bluntly. A constitutional clause, no matter how grandly worded, doesn't automatically get you into a powerful military alliance like NATO. Membership requires a complex, multi-state consensus, strict criteria, much more than just a national declaration.
Otherwise, as one source hilariously points out with these preposterous examples, Malawi would already be in the G7.
Right.
Lesotho would be the SpaceX program, and my cousin's garage band would be playing Coachella.
Exactly. It highlights this almost magical thinking, this belief that just declaring something makes it reality.
Yeah.
Another diplomat quoted likens it to writing, "I intend to marry Beyoncé in your diary." Nice thought, but she's not calling you based on that.
Oh.
Or another quipped, "If I tattooed Harvard graduate on my arm, it doesn't make me smarter, just makes Thanksgiving awkward."
Okay, I get the picture.
My personal favorite from the sources. "I aspired to become Batman. Still waiting for the Batmobile." Each one, while funny, just perfectly illustrates the huge disconnect between a declared aspiration and the practical, often tough path to actually getting there.
But hang on, this wasn't just harmless daydreaming, was it?
Yeah.
One source asks if enshrining this clause was like a matchstick in the powder keg of war. Was it? Did Russia genuinely see this constitutional wish as a direct existential threat, even if it was practically irrelevant to actual membership?
That's a really critical question, and the source uses a vivid analogy. It was like poking a bear with a paper banner that says, "One day, I'm totally joining the Hunters Club."
Okay, yeah, the bear probably doesn't like that.
The bear, as it turns out, does not find this amusing. The bear mauls. Now, while Kremlin officials in private might admit the clause had no actual legal power to grant Ukraine membership, they consistently cited it publicly as proof of NATO's sinister expansionist agenda. One Russian official, quoted with a dismissive shrug, apparently said, "Still, it made us mad. Like when your ex changes their Facebook status to in a relationship with someone hotter."
Wow. So, legal weight aside, it was potent rhetoric for them.
Absolutely. Provided a justification, fueled their narrative of encirclement and threat.
And NATO's reaction. In contrast to Russia's anger, it sounds like it was more like polite laughter.
Yeah.
Or maybe just bemused shrugging. What was the feeling there?
Precisely. NATO's response, as described, was a mix of flattery and bewilderment. Secretary General Stoltenberg was reportedly seen nervously clutching a coffee mug at a press conference, saying something like, "We're flattered, really, but constitutions don't work like Tinder bios. You can't just swipe right on collective defense." Unofficially, NATO staffers were apparently comparing it to a child's crayon drawing of a rocket ship labeled Mars 2035. It was acknowledged, maybe even appreciated symbolically, but never taken as a binding commitment or an immediate path to membership, which really underscores the huge difference between an aspiration and actual policy.
Here's the kicker, though, the real irony. Having the clause in the Constitution doesn't get you into NATO.
Right.
And conversely, removing the clause doesn't stop NATO from inviting Ukraine in later, say, 2035, maybe after we all have flying cars.
Yeah.
It's almost self-defeating, isn't it?
That's the fundamental, almost tragic irony of it all. Constitutions don't dictate NATO membership. What controls it? Complex geopolitics, the reality of wars, and, as one source jokes, very nervous German chancellors wary of confrontation. The deeper implication, which the source highlights quite starkly, is this. For years, Ukraine had a constitution that basically said, please invade me, I'm shopping for alliances, and here's the proof. It inadvertently signaled vulnerability and an urgent search for alliances in a really sensitive neighborhood.
And Russia read that signal its own way.
Predictably, yes. In its own aggressive, confrontational way. It's a powerful lesson in how even symbolic gestures, maybe meant for domestic audiences or Western reassurance, can have unintended severe consequences globally.
Okay, so this constitutional clause, this aspirational wish list, this symbol, where does it ultimately lead? To a place no one, not even the most cynical satirist, could have predicted. A fierce geopolitical debate that somehow cascaded all the way down to a parking spot, then a helicopter landing pad right at NATO headquarters in Brussels.
Yep.
This is truly where our deep dive takes its most bewildering and utterly comical turn.
It absolutely does. It perfectly illustrating that intersection of high-minded policy and, well, the mundane. The premise revealed in these leaked internal memos is that since Ukraine's constitution still contains the strategic course toward NATO membership clause, Ukrainian MPs started debating what practical benefits this legally enshrined aspiration might entitle them to, even before full membership.
Practical benefits
Like, the most pressing, immediate, and utterly baffling issue that came up was, of all things, a dedicated parking spot at NATO HQ.
A parking spot. Seriously. This sounds less like international relations and more like an episode of Veep or something.
Right. So what were NATO's internal dilemmas as this parking spot request first landed?
Yeah, what happened inside NATO?
Well, according to a classified NATO internal memo, apparently from the wonderfully named Office of Strategic Parking and Symbolic Logistics.
You're kidding. That's its real name.
That's what the source claims. Anyway, the issue quickly spiraled. Facilities management, taking the clause literally, actually asked, does this mean we must allocate a parking space for Ukraine's rep just in case they are admitted? Their argument was Ukraine is sort of a member in spirit, so may be entitled to one space, ideally near the vending machines.
Oh my God.
But the budget office immediately pushed back, stating with bureaucratic precision that parking was already over capacity due to Montenegro's motorbike situation.
Montenegro's motorbike situation? What on earth is that? That's amazingly specific.
Isn't it? Apparently it consumes a surprising amount of asphalt, but it gets better. The protocol department suggested reserving a cafeteria table labeled Future NATO Member 2025 with a little Ukrainian flag.
Oh, come on.
Legal warned this could be seen as an Article 5 guarantee of free soup. Logistics got an unofficial request from Kiev to pre-order NATO letterhead just to get a feel for it.
Stop it.
That got put on hold. Apparently, Georgia asked for something similar once, and there's still a 40-foot welcome new NATO member banner stored in a damp warehouse corner.
Unbelievable.
There was even a debate about hanging Ukraine's flag in the lobby saying, manifesting membership since 2019, but graphic designers warned the font costs alone could hit $300,000. And IT security. Very pragmatic. Ukraine can't have the full NATO Wi-Fi password until membership. So, a guest account. Ukraine Clause 2025 with limited bandwidth. A temporary symbolic gesture. Bureaucracy at its finest, most frustrating.
It's a masterpiece of gridlock. But Ukraine wasn't just passively waiting, right? Their own internal memos show them actively debating demands. What were they asking for?
Oh, the Ukrainian Verkhovna Rada memo is described as a treasure trove of escalating specific demands. After the parking spot, the next big debate, an EV charger.
An easy charger.
Yep. The Green Energy Caucus insisted, if we ask for a spot, it must come with an EV charger for when Elon actually delivers our cyber Humvee.
Fiber Humvee, okay.
But then rural MPs piped up asking, why not demand a tractor charger too? Half our voters still show up on John Deere's, metaphorically. The range of needs was diverse.
A tractor charger at NATO HQ. The sheer audacity.
Yeah.
What about the location of this magical parking spot? They must have had ideas.
Oh, remarkably precise, strategically minded ideas.
Yeah.
The Defense Committee wanted it closer to the main entrance, so Putin sees it on TV and panics.
Right.
Foreign Affairs was more practical. Forget Putin. Let's get it near the NATO cafeteria. Symbolism is nice, but free croissants are better.
Can't argue with free croissants.
They also debated putting a small Ukrainian flag on the dashboard of the hypothetical car. Legal worried it implied de facto membership. PR insisted it would look fantastic on Instagram.
Of course it would. And cost. That
Right.
they debate cost sharing?
Naturally. The budget office suggested, hopefully, maybe we split costs. We paint the lines, NATO pays for the EV charger, EU throws in free parking validation.
Sounds reasonable-ish.
Opposition MPs immediately shot back. Why pay? If our constitution says we're joining, they should pay us to park there. It's an investment. The memo ends with a Ukrainian MP's blunt summary. If our constitution can't get us into NATO, it should at least get us free parking. Captures the whole surreal frustration, doesn't it?
It really does. So how did NATO respond? This is where the dialogue gets even more absurd, with NATO's internal reply memo described as dripping with bureaucratic absurdity.
NATO's Directorate of Facilities, Symbolism, and Aspirational Membership, yes, apparently a real internal name, according to the source, sent a reply confirming the frantic internal debates. The EV charger, estimate, €12,000 per unit plus $4,000 annual maintenance.
Ouch.
Which the budget office noted was roughly equivalent to feeding the Latvian delegation for 3 years. The Energy Security Division insisted it must be powered by green energy, ideally captured from Stoltenberg's jogs, or maybe the collective sigh of relief when crises are averted.
Okay, the passive aggression is just, wow. Did they offer any compromises on the charger?
Oh, the compromises are peak bureaucratic satire. To address the symbolic implications of a working charger implying pre-membership privileges, they floated this bizarre idea. Install half a charger symbolic plug only, no electricity.
Half a charger? What does that even mean?
Exactly. Shows good faith without any actual benefit. Alternatively, logistics suggested 2 bicycle racks instead. But Public Affairs warned this could be seen as insulting unless carefully branded as Euro-Atlantic climate resilience infrastructure.
Euro-Atlantic climate resilience infrastructure. For bike racks. I'm speechless. What were the internal NATO arguments over this?
Hilarious debates. Budget just wanted the bike rack. Cheaper, eco-friendly, symbolic enough. Legal agreed, as long as no one calls it Article 5 protection.
Right.
Public diplomacy worried. If we deny the EV charger, Zelensky will show up with a 100-meter extension cord and plug into Stoltenberg's office.
I can almost picture that.
My favorite suggestion came from the military committee. Ever direct. Just buy a tank, weld an outlet on it, park it in visitor's lot. Symbolism solved, powerful deterrent, bureaucracy at its most inventive.
So from bike racks and symbolic plugs, Ukraine's demands, somehow driven by this constitutional clause, escalate dramatically to a full-fledged helicopter landing pad. This must have caused an absolute meltdown at NATO HQ.
Absolute meltdown is right. Sources describe a strictly confidential NATO emergency crisis meeting held at 2 a.m. after Ukraine's Helipad or bust memo leaked.
2 in the morning.
Wow. The Secretary General reportedly slammed papers demanding, "Do you honestly want Zelensky's helicopter blocking Stoltenberg's Prius?" Head of facilities pointed out they'd have to rip out the staff football field, infuriating the Norwegians who loved their lunchtime games.
Oh, the humanity.
Oh.
And the cost. The helipad cost must have been astronomical.
Budget office estimated a cool $7 million. They desperately suggested, for half that, we paint a circle on the ground, call it a helipad. Symbolism.
Did that fly?
Lidl shot it down. Liability.
Uh,
Deputy Secretary General feared Ukraine would next demand an aircraft carrier in the Brussels Canal, at which point a random intern quietly noted the canal's too shallow.
Poor intern.
Secretary General snapped back, "Shut up, intern. Not helping." Total farcical panic.
Pure chaos.
Oh, yeah.
What was the final decision from this 2 a.m. meeting?
Head of facilities, defeated, argued it was cheaper to just build the damn helipad to stop the daily faxes titled Helipad Now or Never and the calls from Kyiv.
So they gave in.
Secretary General, with a reported sigh heard across the continent, reluctantly agreed, instructed them to draft the press release. Call it symbol of Euro-Atlantic unity and vertical readiness. And for God's sake, don't let Ukraine Instagram it before it's built, or the Germans will demand solar-powered landing lights.
Unbelievable. The crisis bizarrely resolved by giving in to the most absurd demand. Okay, but this whole helipad saga wasn't just internal memos, right? It blew up into a global media spectacle. revealing deeper fault lines, highlighting the absurdity but also the seriousness. How did CNN cover it?
CNN reported, NATO in turmoil over helipad. We never thought democracy would come down to helicopter parking. They quoted an anonymous NATO official. We faced Russian tanks, cyber attacks, but nothing prepared us for parking negotiations. Another diplomat said, we thought collective defense meant missiles, troops, treaties. Apparently it means reserving space for Zelensky's chopper. They highlighted the $7 million costs, the absurd alternatives like painting a circle or offering a giant trampoline.
A trampoline. And Fox News, predictably, they had a different take.
Oh yeah. Headline, NATO wastes millions on liberal helipad agenda while ordinary Europeans struggle to park. Total outrage. Quoted angry commuters unable to park their Fiats while Zelensky apparently needs a personal runway. Accused NATO of greenwashing with solar-powered floodlights and sustainable vertical mobility infrastructure talk. A former U.S. defense official told Fox, this isn't collective security, this is collective stupidity. NATO was built to stop Soviet tanks, not guarantee Zelensky valet service. Labeled it the liberal helipad.
Of course. Then MSNBC countered.
MSNBC, with conservatives melt down over helipad while ignoring billion-dollar tanks, called out the manufactured outrage, pointed out $7 million is less than the Pentagon spends on office coffee stirrers annually.
Good point.
An anchor quipped, apparently pouring billions into tanks that guzzle diesel is fine. But a helipad, that's where they draw the fiscal line. Emphasized, NATO spends billions on tanks and missiles without similar outcry, while this one helipad became the end of Western civilization.
And the BBC tried to find the nuance.
BBC World Service. Observers suggest NATO helipad dispute reflects broader geopolitical anxieties. Said the seemingly minor disagreement assumed symbolic proportions far beyond its concrete footprint. For some, solidarity. For others, needless extravagance. Highlighted internal divisions. France wanting stylish lighting, Germany an energy-efficient hovercraft dock, Baltics demanding equal sea access. A diplomat side, in geopolitics, even the smallest landing pad can become a runway for larger disputes.
And the view from the global south. Al Jazeera highlighted a disconnect.
Starkly different. Al Jazeera English headline. As wars rage and poverty deepens, NATO debates helipad for Ukraine. Strong moral critique. Pointed out the stark disconnect between Western priorities and urgent realities elsewhere. A Nairobi analyst. Not just a helipad. Symbolism of Western institutions spending millions on parking while telling Africa and Asia no money for debt relief, vaccines, aid. Aid groups noted $7 million could feed over 100,000 people for a year. A Middle Eastern diplomat. When your people are under bombs or starving, hard to watch the richest alliance argue about helicopter parking.
Wow. And then the UN weighed in, starting with an awkward press briefing.
The leaked UN press briefing transcript is pure discomfort. Journalist from Bangladesh. Why 7 meters for a helipad when a third of my country is underwater? Park a helicopter on a flooded rice field instead. Kenyan journalist. Helipad versus mosquito nets. Isn't malaria a security threat killing more than all NATO press briefings combined? Bolivian journalist. Free in-flight snacks and red carpet. Nepali journalist. Poorer nations get a bicycle rack at the UN or a goat parking zone.
A goat parking zone. What did NATO say?
The NATO rep, looking grim, offered a strained analogy. Democracy is like a helicopter. Without a place to land, it just hovers aimlessly until it crashes.
Yikes. And this went all the way to the UN Security Council. The peak absurdity.
Peak absurdity indeed. The unofficial transcript shows permanent members in full sarcastic mode. Russia smirked. For 7 meters, Russia builds 3 airports. NATO can't even manage painted asphalt. China opposed external interference in internal parking arrangements, adding it was a provocation to bicycles.
Provocation to bicycles?
France insisted on tasteful mood lighting tricolor beams. UK supported it, provided someone else pays.
And the non-permanent members brought reality back.
Tried to. Ghana. Could 7 meters go to food security? Helicopters can wait. Hungry children cannot. Brazil. Will the helipad accommodate Amazon delivery drones? Debate spiraled. Russia suggested a trampoline. U.S. accused Russia of undermining international landing norms.
Landing norm.
A resolution recognizing the helipad as essential to international peace was vetoed by Russia and China. France abstained over lighting specs, UK over budget estimates. Council President concluded, grimly, the Council had failed to act once again, and the helipad remains unresolved. #outro.
What a journey that was. We started this deep dive with a grand, ambitious roadmap for peace in Ukraine, built on political compromise, regional autonomy, understanding historical grievances.
Very serious stuff.
Then we took this sharp, almost unbelievable turn into the surprising, often comical saga of Ukraine's constitutional NATO clause and the resulting utterly baffling Helipad crisis at NATO HQ.
It's quite the contrast, isn't it? What this deep dive really shows us, you see, is that the pursuit of peace, especially in these complex geopolitical situations with historical enmities, deeply held identities, it's rarely straightforward.
No kidding.
It's this fascinating, often bewildering blend of serious policy considerations, deeply felt national aspirations, and sometimes just the unexpected theater of bureaucratic negotiations over things like, well, parking spaces.
Right. The roadmap for peace, in all its seriousness, it highlighted a fundamental truth that often gets lost, doesn't it?
Yeah.
That there's no purely military solution, only a political one. It laid out that detailed, multifaceted approach. Fresh elections, constitutional amendments, a federal model, minority rights, identity, all critical.
And then the wish list part, Ukraine's NATO clause and the Helipad saga really brought home the potent and sometimes perilous nature of symbolism in international relations.
So?
Well, constitutional aspiration, legally meaningless for actually joining NATO, became a matchstick in the powder keg for Russia, fueling their narrative. While for NATO, it morphed into this source of immense bureaucratic headaches and public ridicule. It just underscored how symbols, even seemingly minor ones, can inadvertently provoke or reveal deep divisions, not just between nations, but within alliances themselves.
And finally, that global media reaction, the UN debates.
Yeah.
It really put a spotlight on the stark disparity of global priorities, didn't it?
Absolutely. While some of the world's richest were arguing, apparently with straight faces, over a 7 million helipad and memo wording,
Yeah.
countries from the global south were asking why those funds couldn't go to urgent needs like food security, malaria prevention, debt relief. It highlights a profound, often uncomfortable disconnect between the debates of the powerful and the harsh realities faced by millions.
So as you reflect on this deep dive, maybe consider this. If solving some of the world's most pressing conflicts, debates carrying the weight of nations, millions of lives, if it sometimes comes down to arguing over a helicopter parking spot, what does that tell us about the real, often hidden barriers to global peace? And perhaps the unexpected places we might actually find solutions, or at the very least, maybe a shared bewildered moment of laughter.